Hi everyone, it's Noelle. Welcome back to Dear Horse World. While we're between seasons, we've got something really special for you. A mini-series we're calling Groundwork Guys. If you've been around the horse world for a while, you've probably heard the name Tik Maynard. He's a horseman and author of In the Middle Are the Horsemen, and one of our member favorite trainers on NF+. Joining him is Nick Rivera, a lifelong trainer and horseman whose quiet, thoughtful approach has made him one of Tik's closest collaborators. Over the next few weeks, Tik and Nick are taking the mic to share real, candid conversations about the why and the how of groundwork. What it really means to build trust, to read the horse in front of you, and to refine the smallest details that make the biggest difference. Groundwork has completely changed the way I connect with my own horses. It's helped me notice things I used to miss. It's helped me slow down and to build a relationship that feels more like a conversation rather than a command. And the best part is, you don't need a full training setup or a daily practice to benefit from it. No matter your discipline, skill level, or how much time you have, these ideas can help you understand your horse more deeply and strengthen the partnership you already have. So whether you're driving to the barn, mucking stalls, or just craving some inspiration between seasons, settle in. This is Groundwork Guys, a special Dear Horse World series with Tik Maynard and Nick Rivera.
Hi, I'm Tik.
I'm Nick.
And together,
we're the Groundwork Guys.
So, Nick, what's our question today?
All right, let's just dive right in.
I love it.
Okay, so this comes in from Megan. She says, hello, my name is Megan. I have a mare who lived as a brood mare and is basically feral. Handling has been a journey in itself, and trailer loading is a big heck no right now. How would you approach this issue and help put some more tools in the tool belt with this horse?
What's our starting place for that?
Trailer loading, yeah. Well, trailer loading I think can be kind of complex. Like, it depends on how that horse feels about the situation. And there's a lot of elements of trailer loading that they might be uncomfortable with. Like, it could be just the trailer itself. It could be, if there's no ramp, or even if there is a ramp, stepping up onto something. It could be getting between something, could be going under something. Like, they have to deal with all of these things at once. Is something moving underneath them, and not every trailer is very steady.
Yeah, and I think it can also be complicated by a few things that could potentially have gone wrong in that horse's trailer loading experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, things like they've slipped on a ramp, they've hit their head on the ceiling.
Yeah.
Somebody's tied them but hasn't done up the butt bar, and the horse has pulled back and broken the rope and gone flying off backwards.
Right.
So those are specific things that have gone wrong. And then I think it can also be complicated if the horse is just generally very anxious or very distracted or very much wanting to go back to the barn. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of, we can't just think, okay, what is the thing that's going wrong is trailer loading. How do we fix trailer loading? I think we got to start to figure out what the particular part of that, the piece of the puzzle is that we need to work on.
Yeah, and like we were talking about in the last episode, is there any kind of conversation that exists there with this horse? Can they yield to pressure? Like, even just have that basic conversation. Because if you go up to that trailer and start flagging that horse, or using a stick or a whip or a stick and string or whatever, and they have no idea what that means, it may be a conversation less about the trailer and more about just a lack of understanding of what you're even asking for.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think just the confusion, I remember watching this video that somebody recorded on their their home video camera in probably the 90s, one of these ones that they would hold up and it's probably like like a camcorder, like a foot long and weighs like, a few pounds. And I think it was in the early 90s, and they filmed Buck Brannaman, before there was the documentary and before he was famous. And they went and filmed the Buck Brannaman clinic. And he had a horse that wouldn't go on the trailer. And over the course of this hour video, he gets to where the horse will, in probably the first 40 minutes, he finally gets to where the horse will walk on easily in about 40 minutes. And then he actually spends the next 20 minutes, maybe kind of, I don't know if you'd really call it showing off, but he gets to the point where he can then go beside the trailer, and he's got a 45-foot lariat rope, and he can send the horse around back and the horse will load itself. And then he gets to the point where he can open the door of the pickup truck, sit in the seat, and just kind of lean out and point with his left hand, and the horse goes out on this big 25-meter circle at this very kind of relaxed walk, and then comes back to the walk, looks in the trailer, walks in the trailer, and just stands there quietly. And then he has the owner of the horse come out and says, okay, now I'm gonna, have you do this with your horse. And within about 15 minutes, the horse won't go on anymore. So it's a great example that it's easier in some cases to be clear and teach the horse than to have the person learn to be clear. Right. And I'm watching it, and what I was thinking, Buck didn't break it down as much for the person as for the horse, but when I was watching, what I thought I was noticing was the person was always just a little bit in the wrong position, where he was almost teaching the horse to come towards him rather than to be sent onto the trailer. And the horse kind of kept tipping his nose and then pushing with the neck and then pushing with the shoulder. And then the front left foot kind of kept coming into his space. And whenever that happened, what I was seeing was a little kind of micro release, where it was almost like he was training the horse to come over top of him rather than to get good at sending. And one exercise that I do, most people, at least in my world, the 3-day eventing world, most people are much better about pulling or leading than sending. Very few people and horses in the eventing world get good at sending. And so one exercise I'll do sometimes right off the bat, just to see how they handle it, is I'll take a barrel, I'll put a cookie on the top of the barrel, and I'll have the person stand about 10 or 12 feet away from the barrel and see if they can send the horse to the cookie on the barrel. And even though a horse might enjoy the cookie and be food motivated, a lot of times what ends up happening is the horse just keeps coming back towards the person, or maybe the person finally manages to get them away from them, and then the horse just starts circling as if it's being lunged. So they have very little ability to keep it slow and thoughtful and steer from a distance. Have you ever tried that exercise?
Yeah, I've tried that exercise a couple times. I think we did that. I think we raced one time, actually. I think in Wisconsin.
I like that. Maybe a little competitive.
Yeah, see who can get their horse to the cookie the fastest. Yeah, that's a great exercise. And I think there's a couple things that are going on there. Is like, how can that horse follow your intention, both like yield away from what you're, sending them away from you, or, something else, and communicating to them that there is something out there that you want them to focus on, whether it's the cookie on the barrel, which is a great exercise, or the trailer. And I think the key is, in that moment of curiosity towards the barrel or towards the trailer, that's when that pressure comes off. And that's the moment that you have to look for. And it's hard. I mean, it's easy to miss, because it's like, what in that moment is the horse? You're trying to predict what the horse is thinking.
Yeah.
You're trying to think about what the horse is thinking and then take the pressure away. So that can be a little bit tricky for people to read.
Yeah. If you were to watch the horse when you're trying to think about what they're thinking about, what part of the horse would you watch?
Well, I would watch their eye and their ear. Yeah. And
so the eye and the ear, and a little bit like the facial expressions.
Yeah,
maybe the muzzle, the
expression.
breathing, the eye, the ear. Now, I agree with you. When you're watching other people trail load horses, and especially people that are maybe not being as successful with it as they want, they're not getting the horse in the trailer, where would you notice that they're mostly watching?
That's a good question. I would say for the most part, probably the shoulder or the rib, somewhere that's not the face or the ear.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, I think what they're watching for is they're watching to get the horse's shoulders and front feet lined up with the trailer.
Yeah, but their mind might already be in it.
Or their mind might not be in it at all. right? Like I've seen it so many times where the horse's feet and shoulder are perfectly lined up and the horse is looking up and left and right and won't look in at all.
Sure.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think you're a much better starting point rather than thinking about watching the shoulder and the feet. I'd have a starting point where the horse is 10 feet away, not straight at all, but is looking, kind of peering in with a little interest.
Right.
I think that's a better starting point than getting right up to it, but the horse is refusing to look in.
Right. Yeah, and there's that line, you know, when you're watching horses trail or watching somebody trail, or like there is a line that you can kind of draw around the trailer, or maybe it's like a ditch, or maybe it's a bank or something like that, where they will look at that and they'll have a little bit of curiosity, but a little bit of hesitation. And if you push them past that line, like mentally, it's really hard for them to like be thoughtful and curious about that thing.
Yeah.
They just are now thinking somewhere else because they're like overfaced by the question.
They're feeling overwhelmed.
Right.
You know, the same way that a person maybe would feel, you know, if they're, you know, the best example I've had in my life, I'm getting much better at now, especially with when I'm talking about horses, but is public speaking. You know, it used to be that you put me in front of a crowd of anything over about 5 people and my mind would just go blank, my mouth would go dry, and I would do anything to get out of that situation. Like somehow I managed to make it all through high school and all through 5 years of university with never once putting myself in a public speaking situation. Like I would skip school that day. I would not sign up for that class if there was even one public speaking part of it. Like I would do anything to get out of it.
Should have just backed 10 feet away from the podium and started speaking 10 feet away from the podium.
The point being is because I couldn't think in that situation. I was so overwhelmed, you know? And to think about, you know, that's how some horses must feel, right? Like they get too close to that trailer and they just feel like, I'm overwhelmed. I'll do anything to get out of this situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And so by backing off, we're allowing them to find a little bit of curiosity, like take them out of that situation that's just too much pressure that they can't even think. They can't even think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to think even about some of the things that helped me, I think could also apply to the horse. Like some of the things that helped me were start with a small group of people, start with an instructor that was clear and gave me confidence and made me feel like I was on the right track.
Right.
You know what I mean? And to have that horse do the same thing, like whether you're rewarding them with rest or with a rub, or I think in certain situations, certain horses, I wouldn't hesitate to go to the cookie and say, here's a cookie, you're on the right track.
Right.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that food can give horses when done properly is not necessarily the motivation itself, like they're following grain into a trailer, but to give them clarity. It says, this is the right thing, you're on the right track, I'm giving you confidence, like I believe in you.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really important distinction of having a moment of like rewarding that curiosity, like this thing that you're doing is really good, rather than like trying to lure them towards the trailer and lure them onto the trailer like with the bucket of grain, like follow this up here. Because what will happen sometimes in those instances is like you like lure them forward and then they get past that point where they are now overwhelmed like mentally, but they're like following their nose to want to go towards that grain. And then if they like finish the cookie or the grain or something, they realize that they're like way past their boundary for tolerance of that thing, whatever it is. And then they can't really think about it.
Yeah, some people call that the difference between a reward and a bribe.
Right.
Meaning the reward is they didn't know it was coming, they've already done the thing, and then here's a reward at the end.
Yeah.
And a bribe is something that they follow. You know, one of my favorite horse documentaries is called Taming Wild with Elsa St. Clair. And she has the idea that she's going to train a horse for a year without using any ropes, any halters, any saddles, any bridles, no sticks, no flags, avoiding being in a round pen. And as part of that, she was like, I'm not going to use any food to train my horse either, for precisely that reason, that when they're eating, they can go beyond the pace that they're comfortable with. But what actually happens in the documentary is the first time she gets on the horse is eating. And at the time, she didn't realize that's part of the reason why the horse stood still for her to get on. And then all of a sudden now the next day, she goes to get on and the horse won't stand still and doesn't sort of accept her onto back. And she kind of had to think about it. And it's interesting for the people that notice it as they watch this documentary to go kind of like, oh, like I really see that happening. When the horse is eating, it's kind of distracted. Its tolerance is, the way it thinks about it is slightly different. And then all of a sudden you take the food out of the picture and the horse is like, actually, I'm not totally okay with this.
So in that instance, you would consider that having been like a bribe.
Correct. More like a bribe.
Exactly.
Exactly.
The way that the horse interpreted it, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. And the big way I think about food now in most situations is not as something that they're going towards or even providing a lot of motivation in itself, but more about providing clarity to let them know on the right track and let them know they're doing the right thing. Because I think for a lot of horses that they want to do the right thing and they just can be a little bit confused by it, right? And I think giving them the clarity through food to sort of say, let them know this is the right thing. This is exactly what I'm looking for. And once they start to understand that concept, I think it can be really helpful.
Yeah, to punctuate a moment in time.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think there's been a few times where, I mean, we think of horses like grazing or something like that as being like they're kind of at a lower emotional state. They're a little bit more relaxed. But I've definitely seen it where horses, I mean, I've seen it many times where horses will be like frantically eating. And it's almost like, I don't want to say like a coping mechanism, but it's like something that they do to try to find cover, but it's like a frantic, like a really fast graze, or they're like really, gnashing at the grain or something like that. And when I see that moment, I'm like, oh no. Okay, this is frantic grazing, let's get off and try to find some relaxation, something like that.
I've heard it said the same thing with people, like when people are anxious or dealing with like a large amount of, depression or grief or something like that, that some people can go two ways. One person sort of overeats or binge eats, and the other person can hardly eat anything. Yeah. Right. Like it changes our eating patterns.
Yeah. Yeah. I think with this horse, I mean, I think we're in agreement that the plan will be to see what they know about this conversation of pressure. Can they move off of pressure? Can we have this basic conversation? It sounds like she's been out in the pasture for a while, so that might be a little bit of a learning curve for her.
What do you think about, just hearing you say that, what do you think about in this case then, taking the truck and trailer out into the paddock, where maybe in a place where the horse is already comfortable? Right. Are you thinking take the horse away, take them into an arena or a driveway and set it up there?
Well, I don't know what the situation is on that property. Yeah. So I think that can be helpful for some horses, or if you're like trying to load them at liberty, like parking it on the edge of a round pen, so that they can kind of find that, so that they can find that at liberty. And it's fairly straightforward. I don't know about this particular property. So we'll just have to see. We'll have to see what's out there. I think going in the pastures, it's not a bad idea. I mean, she might be a little bit more comfortable out there and willing to learn.
Yeah. And that's a big part of it, is even if you've got a high level understanding of how to train something, every situation is different. Not only is every horse different, but every property that you go to has a little bit of different feel to it, depending on where the barn is, how big the barn is, how many horses are on the property. One of the toughest things can be that you go to that property, and let's say there's only two horses on the property and they're best friends, and you can't load the horse near the other horse. All of a sudden, I'd say the chance of being successful on day one with trailer loading is almost zero.
Right.
Because the two horses are just going to have this huge draw to each other, right? Unless maybe you go and load the other one first and load the more difficult one second. But even then, I don't think it's really setting you up for long-term success.
Yeah, because again, we may find ourselves in that situation, or if you were to load the buddy, like they may get on, but they might not be like thinking confidently and comfortably
about getting on. All they're thinking is, I got to follow my friend, whether it's off a cliff or into the trailer. They're not really like doing it with thoughtfulness.
Yeah. I think too, if the trailer is just like way too much, like we can break it down a little bit further. And I don't know if there's any obstacles at this place or not, but like what I was talking about in the beginning of this conversation with, can they comfortably, confidently stand up on something like a pedestal? Yeah. So isolate all of the things that they may encounter and then gradually kind of put them together. So like, can your horse, if this trailer doesn't have a ramp, and I don't know if it does, can your horse step up onto something with confidence? Are they physically fit enough to do that? Can they step up onto something with confidence? Can they maybe go either between two barrels, or like between, you in the fence.
Yeah.
Some places have what's called a car wash, which is something that they go under and through. And all of those questions are relatable to the trailer because they're experiencing all those things at once. So then maybe combining them, like, can we put the pedestal in between two barrels or in between, and have them go up
So
there?
you're combining sort of a squeeze between the barrels and a step up.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then, I don't know if you said, did you just say a teeter-totter?
Tired of frozen troughs, high utility bills, and dirty water that your animals refuse to drink? It's time to upgrade to the waterer trusted by farmers and ranchers across North America, the Jug Waterer from Baco Industries. With over 30 years of field-proven performance, the Jug Waterer is engineered to do one thing exceptionally well. It delivers clean, fresh, and natural flow drinking water all day, every day. Animals love the familiar open-style drinking. The Jug's fully insulated design and patented drinker ball reduce heat loss, block debris, and keep water ice-free, even in the harshest winters. A university study found that Jug Waterers with thermostat control used 85% less energy than competitor models without thermostats. That's only 11 cents a day to operate, saving you over $110 per season. And when it comes to maintenance, the Jug is built tough. It features a high-impact polyethylene body, stainless steel hardware, and a simple design that's easy to clean and service. Whether you're watering 10 animals a day or 200, there's a Jug model that fits your herd and your climate. Proudly made in the USA and backed by a 5-year warranty, Jug Waterers are the smart and sustainable choice for your farm, your animals, and your bottom line. Visit bacoindustries.com, that's BAKKO industries.com, to learn more and see why the best farms choose Jug.
Did you just say a teeter-totter?
No.
Because I think the wiggle of a horse trailer or the wiggle of a ramp can be a big thing as well. So just like you're saying with the obstacles, something that has a little movement to it, like a teeter-totter.
Yeah, a teeter-totter. I've seen a couple interesting ones where it'll be like a circular teeter-totter with almost like a ball in the middle. So I think those are really cool. I haven't used one of those myself.
What about the suspension bridge for horses? Have you seen one of those?
Yeah, I've built one of those before.
Yeah. The only one I
cool.
saw that looked really safe to me was one that was actually built into the ground.
Yeah.
And so they could go off to the left and right.
Yeah.
They didn't really have to actually go over like a hole and have railings on the left and right side.
Yeah, the one that I built was, it was movable. And so I can't remember if it was 4x4s or 4x6s or 6x6s, but basically have something that you could lift it with a skid steer or something.
That's cool.
And then, the center is just suspended, and actually in the middle, so it was adjustable. There were turnbuckles on the end of the cables. So when you're first introducing it, the center will rest on the structure.
Yeah.
So that it's not wiggly the whole way through. Like, it's wiggly when they get on, and then they find a little bit of
interesting.
solid,
in the middle.
a little bit of solid.
So it's almost like they're going towards that.
Right. Yeah.
Or they get a little break halfway across.
So they get a little break. So it gets stable, and then it gets like a little bit wiggly as they go off, but not as much as when they first step on. So they step up, it's a little bit wiggly, and then they find a little bit of that comfort. So they're kind of drawn a little bit towards it.
I like that.
And then you can tighten it, and that raises the center up. So then the whole thing is,
I like that.
Is wiggly.
I think we should build one of those. Yeah. Here.
Let's do it.
And by we. By we, I mean Nick. Nick is a fantastic, he's fantastic at anything from building a website to building a house to building a suspension bridge. But I think that'd be a good thing to have around.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one more question about trailer loading. Have you ever recommended to somebody that they get a new trailer? That you feel like the one that they have is not appropriate for that horse in some way?
Only with height.
Interesting.
Like loading a very tall horse into a trailer that can't accommodate it, because some of them are quite short. That's really good. But not with like slant load versus straight load versus like stock trailer versus.
I've seen it with height. I've also seen it with length, like somebody bringing a bigger horse into like a quarter horse trailer where their nose, like almost at the front, they almost have to bend their head to be straight.
Yeah. So if it can accommodate them physically, but in terms of like layout, I don't
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that really.
I have seen a couple other sort of behavioral type things is some trailers have a much more stable feel to them, whereas some of them can be very, very like tippy and rocky and kind of make noise as they do it.
Yeah.
And while, yes, you'd like to think your horse could learn to accept that and not be scared of it, I certainly wouldn't be against somebody if they had the money to say, I'm going to sort of buy a more stable feeling trailer. You can kind of understand even from a human perspective how it might feel to be on a train that is, noisy and wiggly versus one that has a smoother ride.
Yeah, definitely. I think understanding a little bit about trailers and their suspension helps there too. Like most of the larger trailers will have what's called torsion suspension. So there's like a little lever and kind of a rubber thing in there, and that lever will move up and down, and that's how the suspension works. So it relies a bit on the tires and a bit on the tension of this lever, and those are very stiff. Like when you stand up on those trailers, like they don't have a lot of movement just from your weight or the horse's weight, and those are just a little bit more stable. When you have ones that have what's called leaf springs, which is a spring that is kind of in a bit of a bow, and then the axle is in the center, those have a bit more play. So that would be an interesting thing if people are having a little bit of trouble with that. They can look and see what kind of suspension they might have, because that makes a big difference.
Yeah. The only time I've had to kind of give up on a horse with trail loading was when I really felt like we needed to switch to a horse without a ceiling, or a trailer without a ceiling. And I think you saw that horse as well. It was a horse down here in Ocala.
Yeah.
And, you could get the horses, with enough time, you could get their front feet on. And a couple times I got the horse's hind feet on. But as soon as the horse felt a wiggle in the trailer, it would throw its head so fast and so instantly and so high that it would hit its head, the front of its face right above the nostrils on the roof of the ceiling.
Yeah.
And so hard that there, most of the time there'd be blood afterwards. And at that point, it's not, I think, really almost ethical to continue on at that point with the trailing.
Right.
And I think to get one of those old trailers that have no ceiling, one of the old cattle trailers or horse trailer with stock trailer, just with no ceiling at all.
Yeah.
And to have them get used to everything else, and then you introduce the ceiling last, would have been, I think, the way forward for that horse.
Yeah, I remember that horse. He had a lot of try, but it was, I think the first emotional moment for that horse was, and why he had problems with the trailer in the first place, is he did fly up. I don't know if he was pulling back or something like that, but I remember that story. He hit his head, and then that was just kind of it for the trailer.
Yeah.
And we tried a couple times, and with a little bit of success, but when he would hear anything outside the trailer or any kind of like, I vaguely remember there like being things like little pieces falling off a tree and like pitter pattering on the roof.
Yeah. Anything like that.
Anything like that would just set him off. And that first thing was just that had to come straight up. So, yeah.
And that, it reminds me that some people say that, horses don't learn when they're afraid. I think horses learn better when they're afraid. Not in the way you want, and not with much nuance and subtlety, but when a horse is really afraid of something, that creates a very strong like association and lasting memory. And so it's not the way we want to train horses, and it's not training with the slow thoughtfulness that we want to bring out for every horse discipline or sport that I know. But the learning does happen very strongly and very quickly.
Incredibly quickly. Yeah. I mean, they're experiencing in their minds, a huge amount of pressure. And they're pattern animals. That's how they learn. And I think that comes out a lot surrounding the trailer. I think that a lot of horses, when they learn like pulling back or flying off the trailer or anything like that, like they're genuinely, there's a little bit of fear. And it's not just like I'm uncomfortable. It's like I'm scared of what's happening right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the reasons why like pullbacks can be quite difficult to
There's a strong level of fear involved.
Yeah, oftentimes it happens in that moment. It's like they got tied to a trailer or something like that, and maybe the butt bar wasn't up, and they pulled back and felt the thing. All of a sudden, the walls come closing in, and then they're super scared. They break the thing and fly off and go eat grass. It's like, oh, I wonder why they have a pullback issue.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, that's a common one, unfortunately.
Another story that I know to do with fear, and this is from a novel, so it's not a real story. Let's just make that clear right up front. This goes from a novel. This is a Dick Francis book, And the plot is there's this race barn in England, and what they do with a couple of horses, well, they start with one and then it's successful, so they go on with other horses. They take a horse that is sort of used to finishing, mid-pack, so maybe 4th or 5th place. And they take that horse by himself out behind a barn, and they have a whistle, which is sort of like a dog whistle that is in a frequency only horses can hear. And they blow the whistle, and as they do that, they take a flamethrower to the horse's legs.
Whoa.
And so they create a high level of fear that is associated with that silent whistle.
Sure.
And then that horse is racing, and as it comes into the home stretch and sitting in 4th place, somebody blows the whistle. And the horse has this like burst of adrenaline.
Sure.
Like, just totally like higher than you could imagine, because it's in such a high level of fear, and it goes down and it, finishes in 1st or 2nd place or whatever. And somebody's put a bunch of money on it, and the horse finishes the race, and the horse is in a complete lather, which makes the authorities think that the horse has been drugged, because it's in a complete lather and sweating and looks like wild-eyed, and yet they can't find any trace of drugs in the horse.
Yeah. The fear is a powerful.
Powerful learning mechanism and a powerful motivator.
Right.
And yet neither one is what we want to be using.
Yeah, exactly.
And it really makes me think also that when you're teaching a horse something like trail loading or anything to do with starting a horse, that it's much better to take the time at the beginning and do it correctly than to have to fix something later. I would say that starting a horse, for the most part, is easier than restarting a horse.
Yeah.
Because once you have bad habits, once you have fear involved, then it can take a lot of time to go back and try to sort of undo those things and get on the correct path.
It take the time that it takes, and reward the try and the curiosity. Like, it's not, it's about the trailer, like objectively, big picture, but it's not exactly about the trailer. It's about the effort that the horse puts in to be curious about the trailer, to investigate the trailer, to try to get on the trailer, all those moments. Like, it's not really about the trailer. Like, it's about the conversation and about that language that you're able to develop and learn. And really, this is a great time to do it when you don't have to go somewhere. You don't have to get them on the trailer. Like, even if we can't get this horse loaded tomorrow, like, finding a good place where maybe the wind might just be standing next to the trailer. Like, we have no idea how reactive this horse is to the trailer. It might just be like, can they just relax next to it?
Yeah.
We have no idea.
And that can be your win for the day. But I think what you said about not trying to maybe get it all done in one day or when you're in a hurry, I think that's probably a common mistake with trail loading, is thinking, okay, I'm not going to practice this, and now all of a sudden I got to go to the horse show or I got to go to the vet. It's like, now we got to do it.
Right.
I actually helped somebody 3 years ago, and it was a young stallion that they had, and the horse didn't load very well at all. And I went out there and I spent one session with them, spent about an hour, and we got to the point where the horse I left them when I was walking after. Now the horse could just walk in and out of the trailer. It was a 4-year-old stallion at that point. And the lady said, I'm going to have you out again every week for the season down here in Ocala. And I said, no problem, I can come out. And I didn't hear from her the next week. And then, 2 months later, I saw her at a horse show. And I just asked her, I said, how's it going with that horse that I helped you with that time? And she said, it's going okay. And I said, well, like, tell me more. How long does it take? And she said, well, I go out there 2 hours before I have to go anywhere. And I said, what? I said, you start loading 2 hours before you actually have to leave?
Oh my gosh.
And she said, if I go out there 2 hours before, the horse just walks right on.
Oh.
And she said, if I go out 5 minutes before I have to leave, it takes me 2 hours.
Interesting. That tells you something.
About the person's energy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You go out there, you feel
100%.
like you're not in a hurry, and you're calm and thoughtful and relaxed, and you feel like you got all the time in the world, and the horse walks right on there. All of a sudden you feel like you're in a bit of a hurry, you get a little frantic. That's when it takes you 2 hours.
Yeah, that happens a lot, like not just with trailer loading, but it's like if you work during the day and then you get to the barn and you want to accomplish something, like you put that pressure on yourself, it's going to be a lot harder to accomplish what you want to do.
Same thing in riding. It's very difficult to go in the start box cross country and not have your horse feel a different energy from you than every other time you ride your horse. And there's a great saying in other sports, which is train like you compete and compete like you train. And I think that's the same thing that we kind of want to bring to competition, is that we're not sort of being lazy or cutting corners at home, and then all of a sudden we go to a competition and we ramp everything up, and then all of a sudden the horse starts to feel overwhelmed, starts to hate competition. But can the two things be as similar as possible?
Yeah, and that's a tricky one to replicate. I mean, the start box, like there's so much energy at a show
from the other
like,
horses, the warm up, the loudspeakers, the crowds of people. That is a hard thing to replicate.
Yeah, like how do you work on that? That's another. That's a whole other conversation.
So,
but one thing I'm curious about before we wrap here is what your thoughts are on a horse that may load but doesn't want to get off the trailer, or wants to turn around and get off the trailer going forward. We did have one person that had messaged, and I was kind of curious about thinking how we might address this, is that they'll put a foot down and then hop back in the trailer and try to spin around in the trailer and go off forwards. Like what would be the approach there? Because I think that is a common thing. Like, I mean, the horse walks in and then turns around and stands and looks. And it's like, oh, they got on the trailer, but
I've seen a lot. I'm curious what you think about that too, because I've seen a lot of clinicians that I really respect, and they'll send the horse in, sometimes even from a distance, and they'll right off the bat allow the horse to turn around and then come off forwards. And I don't love that idea. I feel like a lot of times when they're turning around, they can feel a little claustrophobic, and that spin can almost, first of all, create a little more fear, especially if the horse is just a little bit too big for the space. And second of all, create like a pattern that then is harder to get rid of later.
Like eventually you have to either close the divider or
well, it depends a little bit on the layout of the trailer, but generally speaking, I want to feel like my horses are able to back off and not have to turn around to get off. And I think that's for a few reasons, depending on the layout of the trailer, but also so you don't build that pattern of spinning and they don't start to feel claustrophobic as they try to turn, but they can stay facing that one direction. What do you think?
I agree. I think them being able to step back off of something, confidently and in control, I think that's an important thing. I think some horses it's difficult physically, like their pelvis, like it's a bit of a maneuver if you don't have a ramp for them to step back off of something. So of course, taking that into consideration always, the health of the horse. If there's no pre-existing condition with their pelvis, but I don't think it's a great idea to build the pattern of turning around, because it can be pretty hard to change after it's been established. And really, like you said, depends on the layout of the trailer, if it's straight or slant or stock, or you know, if there's space, if there's not space. But as a general rule, you kind of want them to load and just be able to stand there confidently. If it's a horse that's like so emotional about the trailer and getting them on, and they like need that, maybe, but I'd be quick to I mean, I
think there's a lot of steps you could do if you were anticipating that happening. For example, get the front 2 feet on and then back them off.
Right.
Yeah, and then get the front 2 feet on
slower,
and then back them off. Right. And then get them 3/4 of the way on and then back them off, or get them where they're putting one hind leg on and then back them off. So you start building that pattern of backing off before you're even in the trailer.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing I'll do is, once I've got a horse in the trailer and everything's closed up, is that before I go somewhere and after I arrive, before I get off, is I'll have them move a step or two forward and then a step or two back. And even if you only have 6 inches, you can usually have room to get that 1 step forward and 1 step backwards. So you build that pattern of a little forward and back. Otherwise, what can happen with some horses, they get anxious in there, you open the back and they're just in their mind ready to commit to flying off backwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and the same thing goes for flying off forwards. Like, you don't want them to, like, you take the butt bar down or you move the divider or something like that, and they're like, you know, they're immediately bringing that nose around, you know, and to fly off over the top of you or something like that. You know, you definitely don't want that. So, well,
how do you think it's going to go? What are we predicting?
I mean, I haven't seen the horse. We didn't get a video submitted with this one, so it's really hard to tell. You know, I think from her description, at least, it's very, you know, this horse is pretty emotional surrounding the trailer. So I'm like very prepared to not have this horse go on the trailer and just be able to work towards that as a goal. But of course, we'll see. See how it goes. What about you? How do you feel?
Well,
about
I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and obviously it's a bit of a roll of the dice since I haven't seen this horse either. But my prediction is we're gonna struggle a little bit to get this horse relaxed around the trailer, and then we're gonna look for a good quitting spot with the horse, either with the front feet on the ramp or the front feet in. But I think the big thing we're going to be looking for in this case is that relaxed, thoughtful eye that's looking into the trailer.
Yeah, curious. Even maybe not even because I feel like curiosity implies that there might be some forward motion, but relaxed implies like they're just comfortable where they are.
Yeah.
So I think having relaxation with a couple feet in, that would be a win.
Love it.
So
let's see what happens.
Let's do it.